You know what's absolutely brilliant about British politics? Just when you think we've reached peak absurdity, just when you reckon there's no possible way things could get more entertainingly bonkers, someone goes and raises the bar. So imagine this. King Charles releases his New Year honors list, a lovely tradition celebrating the very best of Britain. National treasures getting their well-earned gongs. Everyone's feeling warm and fuzzy. And then somehow, this turns into yet another stick to beat Keir Starmer with. Because apparently, and I need you to stay with me here, the Prime Minister is allegedly having a meltdown because he got snubbed from the honors list. Welcome to UK Political Insight, where we unpack the glorious chaos of Westminster, and today we're diving into the New Year honors drama that absolutely nobody saw coming. Right. Let's set the scene properly. The New Year honors list drops, and it's actually brilliant. We're talking proper national treasures here. Idris Elba gets a knighthood, and if that doesn't make you feel proud to be British, check your pulse. The man who gave us Stringer Bell in The Wire, Luther, and that voice that could read the phone book and make it sound dramatic is now Sir Idris. He's being honored for his work with young people through the Elba Hope Foundation, which focuses on community empowerment, education, and giving young people alternatives to violence. That's genuinely important work, and the fact that he's using his platform and resources to make a difference is exactly what these honors should be celebrating. Then you've got Richard Osman, the Thursday Murder Club author and former Pointless presenter, getting an OBE and being absolutely thrilled about it. Warwick Davis, who's been in everything from Star Wars to Harry Potter, also gets an OBE and jokes that it's the best thing that's ever happened to him, which is saying something when you've been in Star Wars. The man's got perspective and humor, which frankly is more than we can say for most politicians right now. But here's where it gets properly emotional. Jane Torvin and Christopher Dean, the ice dancing legends who absolutely destroyed Russia's dominance back in 1984 with that Bolero routine that's still iconic 41 years later, they're finally getting upgraded to Dame and Sir. Their fans have been campaigning for this for years, and it comes right as they've hung up their skates after 50 years of partnership. 50 years! Most people can't maintain a gym membership for 50 days, and these two have been gliding around on ice together for half a century. The timing is perfect, they've just finished their farewell tour, and now they get this recognition. It's genuinely lovely. The sporting achievements keep rolling. Paula Radcliffe, who held the women's marathon world record for 16 years, gets an OBE. The Lionesses, England's women's football team who won the Euros, are all over this list, with captain Leah Williamson getting a CBE and several teammates becoming MBEs. Their Dutch manager, Serena Wiegman, gets an honorary damehood, because apparently winning the Euros twice, once with England and once with the Netherlands, is quite impressive. Who knew? And the Red Roses, England's Women's Rugby World Cup winners, are strongly represented too, with players and coaches getting OBEs and MBEs after defeating Canada in September. This is what the honors list is supposed to be: celebrating achievement, recognizing service, honoring people who've made Britain better through sport, entertainment, charity work, and community service. It's one of those rare moments where we get to feel collectively good about ourselves as a nation. We get to point at these people and say, yeah, they're ours, and they're brilliant. So naturally, because this is British politics in 2025, someone had to turn it into a scandal. The narrative that's emerged, and we need to be clear, this is largely coming from certain corners of the press and social media rather than any official statement, is that Keir Starmer is furious about being snubbed from the honors list. Now, let's pause here, because this is absolutely mental on multiple levels. First, sitting prime ministers don't typically get honors while they're in office. That's not how this works. You get your gong when you leave, not while you're still warming the chair in number 10. It's tradition, it's protocol, it's literally how the system has always functioned. Expecting an honor while you're actively serving as PM is like demanding your retirement gift on your first day at work. Second, Starmer's been prime minister for what? A few months? Even by the standards of politicians who crave validation like houseplants crave sunlight, expecting recognition this early is spectacularly premature. The man's barely unpacked his boxes at Downing Street. He hasn't even had time to accumulate the kind of achievements or service that typically warrants an honor. What exactly would it be for? Services to winning an election? Congratulations on successfully becoming prime minister. Here's a knighthood? That's not how any of this works. But here's where it gets interesting, because whether or not Starmer is actually melting down about this, and there's precious little evidence he actually is, the fact that this narrative exists at all tells you everything about where he is politically right now. The man can't catch a break. Every single thing gets spun into a crisis. He celebrates a released activist without knowing about dodgy old tweets. He's incompetent. He doesn't get an honor he wasn't expecting and probably shouldn't get anyway. He's having a meltdown. The opposition and certain media outlets have decided that everything Starmer does or doesn't do is evidence of failure, and they're sticking to that script regardless of reality. Now, while we're supposed to be focusing on Starmer's alleged tantrum, can we actually talk about how good this honors list is? Because it genuinely celebrates the kind of people who make Britain better. Idris Elba isn't just getting a knighthood for being a brilliant actor, though he absolutely is. He's getting it for the foundation work, for giving young people opportunities and alternatives to violence. That matters. That's the kind of thing we should be elevating and celebrating. Paul Elliott, one half of the Chuckle Brothers, getting an MBE is absolutely wonderful. The Chuckle Brothers were a staple of British childhood for generations. To me, to you, became a national catchphrase, and Paul's still carrying on the legacy after his brother Barry passed away. That kind of cultural impact, bringing joy to millions of kids over decades, absolutely deserves recognition. Matt Lucas getting an OBE, Mira Sayal becoming a dame, Cynthia Erivel getting an MBE. These are people who've contributed to British culture, who've made us laugh, made us think, represented Britain brilliantly on global stages. Roy Clark, the genius behind Last of the Summer Wine, Open All Hours, and Keeping Up Appearances, becoming a knight at 95 years old is just perfect. The man's been making Britain laugh longer than most of us have been alive. And the diversity stats are actually encouraging. 50% of recipients at CBE and above are women, the strongest representation since 2020. 10% come from ethnic minority backgrounds, 5% identify as LGBTQ+, 15% report a disability or long-term health condition, and 36% come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. That's progress. That's the honor system starting to actually reflect the Britain we live in, rather than just rewarding the same narrow demographic over and over again. But instead of celebrating any of this, we're apparently meant to be focused on whether the Prime Minister's feelings are hurt because he didn't get a shiny medal. It's peak British politics, honestly. We've got this incredible list of achievers and contributors, and the story becomes about a politician who wasn't on it and probably shouldn't have been anyway. The thing about Starmer is he walked into this job with enormous challenges. The previous government left behind the mess of economic problems, public service crises, and political chaos. He's trying to navigate all of that while establishing his own government's agenda and dealing with an opposition that's found its footing after the election loss. And on top of all that, he's got to deal with a media environment that treats every single thing as a potential scandal. This honors list non-story is a perfect example. There's no actual evidence Starmer's upset about this. No quotes, no sources close to him expressing disappointment, nothing. It's entirely speculation presented as fact, designed to make him look petty and egotistical. And the frustrating thing is, it works. Even if you know it's probably nonsense, even if you recognize it as obvious spin, the narrative still gets out there and shapes perception. Starmer's problem isn't that he didn't get an honor, his problem is that he's in a political environment where even things that have nothing to do with him get turned into attacks on him. King Charles releases a lovely honors list celebrating British achievement, and somehow that becomes another example of Starmer's failure. It's exhausting, and it's emblematic of how broken our political discourse has become. Meanwhile, the people who actually deserve attention, the ones being honored, get sidelined in favor of manufactured drama. Idris Elba's foundation work should be the headline, not speculation about Starmer's ego. Torvin and Dean's lifetime achievement and perfect timing should be the focus, not Westminster gossip. The success of the Lionesses and Red Roses, their actual recognition for winning major tournaments, that's what matters. But we don't do nuance anymore, do we? We don't do celebrating achievements without finding an angle to make it about political point scoring. Everything has to be weaponized, everything has to feed into whatever narrative we're pushing. Starmer is either the hero or the villain, depending on who you ask, and the actual substance of what's happening gets lost in the noise. The irony is, if Starmer had been on the honors list, that would have been spun negatively too. Can you imagine? Prime Minister gives himself an honor. How dare he? What arrogance? What entitlement? He literally cannot win. Not being on the list means he's been snubbed and he's having a meltdown. Being on it means he's rewarding himself inappropriately. The game is rigged, and the only goal is making him look bad regardless of facts. Look, the New Year honors are meant to be a good news story. They're one of the few traditions we have that's genuinely positive, where we collectively acknowledge people who've made a difference. Whether it's through sport, entertainment, charity work, or community service, these people have contributed something valuable, and we're saying thank you. That's nice. That's something we should be able to enjoy without turning it into another episode of the Westminster Circus. So while certain quarters are busy inventing dramas about Starmer's alleged emotional state, maybe we should actually focus on the people who earned recognition. Sir Idris Elba sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Dame Jane Torvin and Sir Christopher Dean absolutely deserved. The Lionesses and Red Roses getting their